Good morning, Scotland. Good morning, social media land. I hope you are well. It is Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025. Westminster's refusal to release its secret polling on Scottish independence was never about delays or technicalities. It was a choice, a calculated decision rooted in fear. Because if the polling had shown that Scots were happy in the Union, we would have seen it splashed across the front pages. But instead, it was buried. The real question isn't just what the data showed, but what Westminster's done since seeing the results. If the numbers had reassured them, they would have invested in Scotland. They would have worked to make the Union something Scots could believe in. But that's not what's happened. Instead, we have seen something far more insidious. A slow, deliberate campaign to tighten control, to extract resources and gaslight the Scottish people into believing that they have no alternative but to stay. Because Westminster has learned two things from its secret polling and from independent reports like Onward's State of the Union. First, support for independence is not going away. It remains stronger than before 2014, particularly among younger and working class Scots. Second, blocking a referendum doesn't weaken the movement, it strengthens it. Their response has not been to win Scots over, it has been to make leaving seem impossible. One of the clearest examples of this is what Westminster is doing with Scotland's energy. Superconductor cables are now being built down the east coast of Scotland, linking Scotland's renewable power supply directly into England. On the surface, this is presented as an essential part of the UK's transition to net zero. But in reality, it's something far more cynical. Scotland produces far more energy than it consumes, yet Scots pay some of the highest transmission charges in the UK. The superconductor cables will ensure that Scotland's energy can be sold to England, while Scots remain stuck with high bills and no control over their own resources. This is the modern version of Scotland's oil being siphoned away. A quiet, relentless theft disguised as infrastructure improvements. And it doesn't stop there. Scotland's oil industry has been placed under Westminster control for decades. Now, the closure of Grangemouth's refinery in 2025 ensures that Scotland no longer has the ability to refine its own oil. Now, any oil extracted in Scottish waters must be processed elsewhere, primarily in England. And even if Scotland became independent tomorrow, we would immediately face major barriers in fuel production. A refinery doesn't just close overnight. This was a decision made with long-term consequences in mind, one designed to ensure that Scotland remains dependent. Yes, I know, it is an independent and private company, but you have to remember that the government has given INEOS, the owners of Grangemouth, £600 million to upgrade and reform their refinery in Belgium. Why couldn't they have done that with Grangemouth? At the same time, Westminster has been tightening its grip on the Scottish economy. Labour MPs in Westminster have been celebrating what they call a record block grant for Scotland. But here's the truth. Scotland's share of UK government spending has actually fallen to its lowest levels in almost a decade. In 2015-2016, Scotland received 8.2% of total UK spending. By 2024, that number had dropped to 7.6%. On paper, the amount may have increased, but in real terms, Scotland is getting less than before. It's a simple trick. Westminster takes more from Scotland and gives back just enough to create the illusion of generosity. And Labour calls this proof that Scotland benefits from the Union. But the truth is, Scotland's own wealth is being withheld, then repackaged as a gift. But Westminster's control isn't just economic, it's psychological. Gaslighting is not just a word thrown around online, it is a political tool, and it is being used against Scotland every day. Scots are constantly told that their government is failing, even when the NHS in Scotland outperforms the NHS in England, even when Scottish education remains stronger than much of the UK. The goal is to create doubt, to make Scots question their own ability to govern themselves, to convince them that they need Westminster, even as Westminster exploits them. And it works. Some Scots have internalised this gaslighting. They feel subservient to Westminster. They believe that Scotland is too small, too weak and too incapable of standing on its own. We've even had Scottish politicians turn round and say that Scots are not genetically built for politics.
It was introduced under Westminster rule,
yes, of course,
Joanne.
but it could be introduced anywhere if people believed it was a good idea. We're not genetically programmed in Scotland to make political decisions. We're not genetically programmed in Scotland to make political decisions.
We're not genetically programmed in Scotland to make political decisions.
This is how colonialism works, not through force, but through psychological warfare. Westminster does not need to convince Scots that the UK is good. It only needs to convince them that independence is impossible. It needs to make them afraid. But here's the truth. Westminster is the one that is afraid, because if Scotland was truly dependent, there would be no need for this level of control, no need to siphon away resources, no need to manipulate statistics, no need to suppress democracy, and no need to gaslight an entire nation into believing that it cannot function alone. And of course, no need to hide the polling data. The fact that Westminster is willing to go to such extreme lengths proves exactly what they don't want Scots to realise. Scotland has something worth stealing. The real question is, how much longer are Scots willing to be lied to? How much longer will we allow ourselves to be told we are too poor, too small and too incapable? How much longer will we stand by while our resources are taken from under us while we're left with the bill? It's not about politics. This is about dignity. This is about whether we allow ourselves to be manipulated into believing that we are nothing more than Westminster's dependent. It doesn't have to be this way. There has to be something better, but it requires breaking the cycle of fear and control. It requires seeing through the lies. It requires recognising that Scotland is not the weak partner in this relationship. Scotland is the asset. Scotland is the resource. Scotland is what keeps the UK afloat. Then you can ask yourself, when do we stop letting them take what belongs to us?
They sold our oil, they sold our seas, turning our wealth to their own fees. The mines are closed, the steel is gone. They robbed the future we built upon. It's not our shame, it's the union's shame. They took the power and left the pain. They chose the path that kept us small. It's time to rise and stand for all. Broke the trust, privatized what once was just. Our homes were sold, our pensions bled, while Westminster thrived, we were misled. It's not our shame, it's the union's shame. They took the power and left the pain. They chose the path that kept us small. It's time to rise and stand for all. They sent us to wars we never chose, turned blind eyes while hardship rose. Our riches stolen, our voices distilled, but now's the time to rebuild. Decisions made so far away have held us down, led us astray. But Scotland's strength will lead the way. The future's ours, we'll seize the day. It's not our shame, it's the Union's chain that took the power and left the pain. They chose the path that kept us small. It's time to rise and stand for all. Stand for all. It's time to rise. See the truth behind their lies. Stand for all. We'll make it right. Scotland's future starts